What's going on, guys? Abrasius here with a bit ominous subtitle. So today we will talk about lists for smaller points, since we have once a year a Masters event in Poland that is played on the small point rules, so 2,500 points. So the list building on this format is quite different, in my opinion, than in the regular 4,500. So they will talk about this one a bit. So first of all, let's start with the question about the BSB. On the 4,500, most people tend to bring BSB, especially in the living armies. But on 2,500, bringing BSB seems a bit unnecessary for me, at least, especially because you can practically in any army take only things that are immune to psychology. And if you don't want to take those, you can always take the banner of discipline. Additionally, there is no way to focus shooting so much on the unit, so it is less likely for you to have to pass a panic check. Obviously, the redirect tests are very important, but since there are very few units on the board and the chaff is less common than usual, and maybe this is not such an issue, unless the BSB has also another role to play, bringing only a BSB to be at the BSB, I think is totally unnecessary. So the second point, do you bring chaff or do you just make your unit stronger? I think this is a very interesting question, since deathstars and the big units are huge threats on these points, and I will talk about it later. Since many people don't bring chaff and the amount of shooting is much lower than usual, then your own chaff units can let you really turn the tides of the battle. So I would recommend trying at least one, maybe even two units of chaff. The cheaper they are, the better. So things like saber-tooth tigers or dogs in vampires or in Wars of the Dark Gods should be very, very good here. High armored troops. Usually every army tries to at least have some answers to high armored troops, but since this is 2,500 points only, then it's not very easy to find answers for everything. And many armies will just struggle against them. So make sure that you have your answers against the high armored troops in other armies. So I think last year this Masters tournament was won by the rat player, and there was a second rat player in the top three. So this shows how much anti-armors help against the high armor meta. Another thing is deathstars. People tend to bring one big unit. The potential to get combo charged is much lower, since the tables are also much smaller, and the amount of good units your opponent can pick is lower. So these games often come to answer the question, which Death Star is better. So if you want to play this game, you can bring the Death Star of your own and try to max it out to show your opponent that your Death Star is better. But if you don't want to play this game, you have to remember and think on how would you deal with the Death Stars, how can you stop them. And now the answer for the subtitle, who is the king? So this is the third type of threats I want to show you here, and this is my favorite way of building lists for 2,500, the big bad boys. And the king is the Nurgle daddy. In the last 3 years of the 9th age, I haven't really seen any competitive list using Ladder of Pestilence, but I think at the small points, this might be really worth it. Hunters that usually are there against him are pretty much gone. The table is much smaller, so his slower movement is not such big of an issue. Other greater demons basically don't fit, and he has still a lot of points to spare for items or aspects or being a mage. 7 wounds, toughness 7 makes it very, very hard to kill, and the demons as an army support him excellently. You can bring both the cannon and the bolt thrower to threaten heroes like the Pegasus Lord that can threaten him. You can also threaten the cannons with both of those units. You have the horrors in core that help with magic, and most of the armies will struggle to get more than 3 spells. The demons can easily go for 4 or even 6 spells at this point format, which is kind of ridiculous. You have many cheap items that can help him, like instead of bringing the Eternal Sword, you can always have the Dissolving Touch that answers the high armored troops very, very decently. You can also have the Portal Gem or the Elixir of Souls. I think Elixir of Souls is actually better because until you use it, your opponent always has to consider that you can use it and has to take much longer arcs than he would usually need. So this is very, very important. I think the best counters for him are probably units with poison, because of obvious reasons. But the best units with poison, so like sentinels or witch elves in the dread elves, they can be both dealt with shooting and by magic that you can bring. So I think that building a list around him is a very good idea for this tournament, and I would not be surprised if the list with him would be in the top 3, which will be quite shocking since practically nobody uses him nowadays. You can extrapolate this idea to other armies, but it is very hard to find someone as interesting as him. I think other very good choices are Overlord on the Bull, on the Greater Bull. Then you have all the dragons, but all of those choices are very threatened by the cannon, even one cannon, and the Father of Pestilence is not as threatened as they are. But generally what I would recommend doing is finding one unit with a very interesting niche, just as the Father of Pestilence, and building the army around it. So similarly, you can probably go with the Pendulum in the Vermin Swarm, since it also won't panic off the board. Then you can also bring the Dreadmill, which is one of the best units in the game probably now, and generally build the rats around the ITP concept. For the summary, the 3 biggest threats that you need to remember about is the big baddies as the king, the big deathstars, and lots of armor saves. So the 2 tips that I would want to recommend to use are bringing chaff, even though it seems foolish and unnecessary, and the high leadership or the immune to psychology can spare you the BSB points, especially in the cases that I mentioned that the BSB is just a BSB and nothing else. Okay, so that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you in the next one. Cheers!